Thanks, listeners, for joining us for Wellness Wednesday today. This edition brought to you by Vitality Unlimited programs in our community. And today's guest is from the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners. In fact, the JD Executive Director, Edward Cousineau, who is with the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners, the director. Obviously, Ed, we want to find out more about the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners and the work that this organization does to enhance access to medical care, especially throughout the state, but in rural Nevada.
Yes, ma'am. Well, maybe I can give you a little backstory on basically the Board of Medical Examiners. We are the oldest regulatory body in the state. Basically, legislators created us back in 1899. So this year we're celebrating our 125th anniversary. Basically board licenses and regulates disciplines 5 different medical specialties. Our biggest licensure category being medical doctors, also physician's assistants, practitioners of respiratory care, perfusionists, and just recently this last session, the legislature brought on a new licensure category, anesthesiologist assistants. We have about 14,000 licensees. I'd say probably 11 plus thousand are doctors. There's about 2,000 practitioners of respiratory care, about 1,200 physician assistants, less than 100 perfusionists, and again, we just the law kicked in January 1 of 2024 for licensing anesthesiologist assistants, so we have a grand total of 5. The board itself is comprised of 11 members who are appointed by the governor. They serve 4-year terms, and they can serve up to 2 4-year terms. 6 doctor members, 3 public members, and a physician assistant member, and a respiratory therapist member. And so our main office is here in Reno. We have a staff of approximately 40 in Reno, and we have a satellite office in Las Vegas where we have about 5 employees. And we basically, as I said, have jurisdiction anywhere in the state over those various licensees. And I think the reality is if we continue to grow at the pace we are, we may outgrow the current facilities we have in Reno and Las Vegas in a couple of years. But I can talk to you more about that maybe as far as the growth of our licensure base, if you like, later on.
Hey, that sounds perfect. We're talking with Ed Cousineau. He is the Executive Director of Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners. And Ed, I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind talking about the far-flung areas of Nevada that the organization obviously serves, because the quality of healthcare is significant no matter where you are in our state.
Well, certainly. And again, I think we all recognize that the rurals, not just in Nevada, but pretty much any jurisdiction in the United States, suffer, basically adequate resources at times and by various providers. The one thing I want to make clear to the listeners that the board is not, responsible or charged with recruiting, medical professionals to the state, but certainly what we want to do from our perspective is make it as attractive from a basically, licensing application standpoint, make it as easy as possible if someone does desire to come to the state. There are basically some various programs at the state level that encourage our licensees to practice in the rurals. But again, our main responsibility is basically licensure and discipline of our licensees. So I certainly think we'd love to basically encourage folks to get out there to those rural communities if they're so inclined. Unfortunately, I've found, and I've basically lived in Nevada most of my life, and I've been working for the board for over 2 decades now. Unless you want to hunt fish or, you enjoy the outdoors, a lot of times some of our licensees want to have more of the big city, basically advantages. And that by no means, I love to hunt, I love to fish myself. So I could see living, in a rural community. But that I think is honestly one of the things that was kind of frustrating for, the folks in the rurals, because there's got to be some kind of incentive, usually even monetarily, to get them out there. How that needs to be accomplished, I think that's something that the legislature has tried to work on, continues to work on. I think, one of the things that I've seen, basically very real possibility is starting to get more and more in these rural facilities, try to get resident slots and basically training slots, because oftentimes there is a corollary between a individual doing their professional postgraduate training, where they do that and where they reside. And I'd say probably 95% off the top of my head of these basically residency slots exist in the two major metropolitan areas of Nevada, meaning the Vegas area and, of course, the Reno-Sparks area. So, yes, again, the board is certainly happy every time we get new licensees. The one thing I would say that's really important to note in the last probably 2 to 3 years, the Interstate Medical Licensure Compact, which is a licensing compact that the state has been involved in since 2015, has expanded greatly. We issued last year about 1,700 licenses to our medical doctors, new licenses. Of those, over half were basically done through the compact. The reason I point this out is because the vast majority of people who are getting licensed through the compact practice via telemedicine. And of course, telemedicine is a great model and mode to provide basically care to those rural communities if the actual practitioner is not there, in person to treat clinically.
Oh, thanks, Ed, for obviously reminding us of how important it is that we can rely on this new technology, how it's increasing and enhancing the efficiency of being able to deliver. And it's also helping growth in rural communities as well and meeting some of those needs. And so, Ed, we want the community to know that they have access to the Board of Medical Examiners as an important way to, if they have any questions, if they have concerns or want to look up a license, for example, there are ways for the public to do that, right, Ed?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, we have a website, and I'll give that website address a couple times. So right now it is www.medboard, that's MEDBOARD, .nv like Nevada, .gov like gov. And I basically tell people when I speak to them, about basically for example, if you're looking to buy a car, you're looking to buy some high-end item, usually people do their due diligence and their research. And I think that the same thing should apply to a medical provider. That's obviously medical care, I think, is paramount and just as important as any other decision you would make in, your basically livelihood. And so when people are basically, curious about a provider, if they're, again, one of our 5 basically licensure categories, I encourage them to go to our website. It really is pretty, I think, robust and intuitive. Get on there. You can basically look up information on, the background of a licensee, how long they've been licensed in the state, where they went to school, their undergraduate and medical training, of course, whether there's been any discipline, any adverse action against their license. We also have basically on our website frequently asked questions. Oftentimes if individuals feel aggrieved by a basic conduct of one of our licensees, they certainly can basically go to our website. They can download a complaint form. They can basically populate a complaint form online and upload it directly there. And we also have public filings for basically, our licensees where there has been formal disciplinary action initiated, maybe not a finding of wrongdoing, but again, something that the consumer may want to look to. Our quarterly newsletters are designed for mostly our basic licensee base, but also can be informational for the consumer population. And then, disciplinary actions and things like that have taken place, again, can be found on our website. But yeah, I think the reality is if you go there and you look to basically see the various resources that are available, I think there's a wealth of information. And again, not just basically the fact that you may want to file a complaint, but if you just want to get smart and get educated as to your potential provider. The other thing, too, is that you also have the ability to call a 1-800 number that we have, basically can be used anywhere throughout the state or the country. And so if you have questions, basically about, our display process, about our legal process, or just, questions can be had, you can call that 1-800 number and you'll be transferred to the appropriate basic individual to hopefully assist with questions.
Oh, thanks, Ed. That's so important that people understand that they have access to this information. It's, it's a responsibility of the State Board of Medical Examiners, and we appreciate knowing about that access. And so, Ed, we've been talking about how important it is that the community can educate themselves. People can look up on the website, have access to all kinds of records about the medical care they're getting. But how do you help people who are applying or those who are already licensed, perhaps?
Sure. Well, Lori, first off, again, the same website that I indicated in the previous segment, that's www.medboard, And last year, I think I talked earlier about the fact that we had about 1,700 licensees that we issued new licenses of the MD variety, the medical doctor variety. Overall, though, we issued about 2,100 new licenses for all licensure categories last year. And so every one of those folks basically has to go through this process. And as I talked about earlier, I think if we can make that process as easily as fluid as possible, that might honestly encourage people to potentially come to Nevada that might not otherwise, because not every state, every jurisdiction, it is sometimes it's very onerous or arduous to get licensed. But so when an individual basically wants to potentially get licensed in the state, the first thing most importantly is they want to look and see what are the licensing requirements. Again, in Nevada is unique to probably one of about 8 or 9 jurisdictions where we require 3 years of progressive postgraduate training, also known as residency training, after medical school. Other jurisdictions require sometimes 1 and mostly 2 years. But again, if someone does not have that 3 years of progressive postgraduate training, there are some alternatives to licensure, but that would be something they would want to check out to see if they meet those legal requirements. And again, those requirements are put in place by the legislature. We as a board obviously just have to basically abide by those. And of course, we educate individuals who want to be licensed here in Nevada as to those requirements. So the website itself, they can go on basically, if they're a new applicant, they can set up their own account. And that account basically would have the ability for them to upload information that they can use that's going to be required of their application. Of course, on the website, there lists all the particular requirements that need to come from the individual. We have something else called direct source information, which is information that comes from these training institutions, i.e. medical school, residency programs, that has to be basically requested by the applicant, but basically for the sake of security is sent from that institution directly to the medical board. We also have governing statutes and regulations, again, that are accessible for our applicants. They can take a look and see what they, again, might be required to have or be expected to as far as supervisory requirements, for example, for the various, big licensure categories we have, PAs, their supervisory requirements. Also, very importantly, the requirements for the number of continuing medical education credits that they have to take, and also continuing educational units. The CME is for our doctors and our PA licensees, and the CEUs is for our other 3 licensure categories. Those are things that many of them need to be accomplished actually prior to the issuance of license in the state. So things that an applicant's going to want to know. And then for our current licensees, again, a reminder of all those biannual requirements for renewal of licensure. Certainly there's a breakdown of the costs associated with all our licensure categories for new applicants, as well as applicants who are seeking renewal in the state. And so, I think that, again, is something we also, as I mentioned in the previous segment, certainly available for questions. If they have questions, they can call our licensing division or email our licensing division, and same thing with investigations or our legal division. So all resources that hopefully would, at least, educate a individual who's contemplating licensure in the state as to what they might need to know.
Ed, thank you for the time that you spent with us here on Wellness Wednesday today.
Thank you, Lori.